Hello, everyone. This is Political Chit Chat, and I'm host Gonzalo Duran. Today's honored guest is Reid. He is the chairman of the New York Young Republicans Bronx Caucus. Chris, thank you for being here today.
I'm happy to be here. Thank you for having me, man.
For the audience, for those that may not know who you are, would you mind giving us a little bit about your background?
Sure. My name is Reid. I'm the chairman of the Bronx Caucus of the New York Young Republican Club. I have a little bit of experience in working with the Conservative Party of the Bronx as well. I'm just a guy who's trying to raise the political profile of the Republicans in the Bronx.
Well, that was nicely put.
I try.
Now, are you from the Bronx?
I am, yeah, born and raised.
But you stepped out for a while.
Well, not exactly. So I'm from the Bronx. I was born and raised well, I wasn't born in Westchester Square, but raised in Westchester Square. For a little while, I moved to Vienna, Austria. That's where my wife was living at the time. Then we came back after like 10 or so months, and now here I am back home.
So not too enough to get a nice scenery, but to always remember that you're part of the Bronx.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And a New York on top of that.
Yes.
So now you mentioned that you're part of the Conservative Party. When I met you, you had just left the Trump rally. You were all fired up and looking for something to do. You were a former Republican, and you decided to switch over parties.
Yes.
Now, what was the guiding point for that?
For
joining the Conservatives.
Okay. So, yes, you're correct. I was at the Trump rally in Crotona Park, and I was right at the front row. It inspired me to get more involved. No one else really picked up the phone except this guy right here. And so that's how I got involved with the Conservative Party.
Well, now, in your time with the Conservative Party, you've been doing
Yes.
some really good work. You started out as the webmaster and doing some social media manager,
Yes.
stuff like that. And now you've exceeded and gone past that.
Well,
You've joined the Young Republican Party,
mhm.
became a member with them, and now you're starting your own chapter in the Bronx.
That's correct. Yeah.
So what was the appeal about the Young Republicans?
Well, honestly, my sights were always set on the New York Young Republican Club. Obviously, doing work locally was very important, and that's what I wanted to do to sort of springboard me off and maybe make it to that level. But what really appealed to me with the Young Republican Club is how they cater to youth. And that's something that you don't see very often in the Bronx GOP or even the Bronx Conservative Party to a certain extent, not as much as the other Bronx political organizations. But yeah, that appeal to more younger people and such, that's what got me, because that's the future generation of voters right there. And I thought it was very important that somebody get involved and sort of spread that sort of new right vision in the outer boroughs. That's not just Manhattan.
Well, let's be more direct, because in marketing, you want that 18 to 25, 30 demographic, and that's the key for everything, from movies, politics, whatever it is. That's
the whole thing.
That's what everybody wants, and then you break that down for your key demographics on other stuff that you are. If you're looking for bars, you're looking for young men.
Yes.
Et cetera, and then other things like that. So, the Young Republicans have made a big strides in the last couple years. I mean, the old president was
Gavin Wax.
Gavin Wax, thank
Yes.
you. And Gavin, increased the numbers, had a lot of appeal with the media.
He did.
And made a lot of connections with old ties and then new ties as well, specifically with Trump, and so much so that, the Trump rally in the Bronx was pretty much orchestrated by the New York Young Republicans.
Yes, and we also hosted President Trump at our, I think, 111th or 110th gala.
Yes, and that was
Yeah.
another thing.
Yeah.
And you guys were instrumental in the Times Square event as well, and you guys have done other things as well.
Sure.
In Florida, and Mar-a-Lago and stuff like that.
Yes.
So, we can't ignore that the Young Republicans are, a force that should be looked at and, dare I say, work with,
Uh-oh.
I mean, because, the problem I say with the party levels is that, clubs and other associations are pretty much there to do, maybe some things that the parties aren't able to do or maybe not willing to do in certain factors. And I think it's always important not only to have competition, but also have individuals split up. Now, I always prefer a centralized thing, but obviously we're not in a position right now to question that.
No.
So, I mean, where do you see from the transition from Gavin Wax to the new president,
Stefano Forte.
Stefano Forte?
Yes. What's the question?
So, where do you see the transition from Gavin Wax to now the new president of the New York Young Republicans?
I see it as the proper evolution. Gavin Wax was a fighter. He was everything that I believe made the club what it is today. Stefano Forte is the most absolute best predecessor that you could think of for that, because he's connected with the people, he's connected with the outer boroughs, not just Manhattan. And so in terms of like, I think you're asking me what the difference is?
Well, not just the difference, but where do you see his next steps?
Yes.
And what the club is going to bring in now?
Bigger and better things. I think that right now the club has a good stronghold on Manhattan politics. But right now it's time to sort of echo that energy into the outer boroughs, like the Bronx and Queens, for example. And if I were to surmise Stefano's presidency as of now, it's only been a few months, I would say that it's a more in-depth endeavor into the 5 boroughs, like the Bronx, for example.
Well, I mean, to go specifically for the Bronx,
Yeah.
I mean, he's done already in the last maybe 2 months, maybe 3 or 4 events in the Bronx. That's something that wasn't, a big back then, but, obviously you have to have something going on for it to happen. And having a chairman as a Bronx caucus, bringing momentum into it.
Yeah.
And then I'm assuming the other caucuses as well are doing their part to get them out
Yes.
there.
I think at the time of Gavin's era, which was an undeniable force in New York City Republican politics, there wasn't so much of a need to sort of dip your toe into the Bronx or the outer boroughs at that point. It wasn't yet sort of foretold that this could be a potential stronghold for Republican conservative politics. So at that time, it was not really worth the effort. But now we are seeing monumental changes that are occurring, and it most certainly is worth the effort. And I think Stefano Forte is the greatest president that we could have to sort of bring that into the light and facilitate the next era of New York City politics.
Now, I just want to backtrack that a little bit because although he's new, you've also recently activated and you've been pushing the envelope and getting these activities that wants to bring, let's say your president or the public's eye into what you're doing. Would you mind going into some of the things that you've done recently?
Like myself as the Bronx Caucus chairman?
Mm-hmm.
Well, yes, of course. So our first endeavor, we formed in January. We didn't really do much until February. The first endeavor that we embarked on was a migrant shelter protest in front of the councilwoman in front of the office of the councilwoman responsible for the largest migrant shelter in the Bronx. And her name is Diana Ayala. And so we did a bit of a demonstration there, and it was impactful, but not as much as our second one. And so we saw the momentum of the first one, and we decided we need to continue with this because migrant shelters in the South Bronx, people in the South Bronx cannot afford to share whatever little resources they have with a 2,200 occupancy men's-only migrant shelter. So then we did go to the South Bronx, and we had a demonstration outside of that, and I think maybe like 40 people showed up, and it was enough to garner us a little bit of Fox News attention, and I was fortunate enough to be featured on Fox and Friends and to discuss the logistics of this migrant shelter, which, by the way, still operates, but is no longer a men's-only migrant shelter. They've peppered in a few women and children there just to save face, I would imagine, because of all the noise that we were making doing that. So yeah, we got the Fox News, and I think it did make an impact in terms of how that migrant shelter operates, and especially in terms of how the people in that immediate community respond to it. Like before, they were against it, sure, but nobody was going there to give them a platform to say, we're against this thing, we have our own problems, we need to take care of ourselves first. Then we got involved and we sort of gave those people that platform, and now here we are, so.
And I'm just going to backtrack once again, just a
Of
little bit
course.
more, because yes, you had 40 people, and you got Fox News, and it was blazing cold during that day, and I was covering that story.
You were there.
So, having all those things during the weekday, it showed the impact of the individuals, and I'm sure there were more people that wanted to be there. And there was an array of people. There was teachers, community members, elected officials,
Yes.
activists, and et cetera, and people from the community that were walking by coming in as well. Obviously, it was a tenuous thing, that subject matter of the immigrants, because it's such a, the population in that area is majority immigrants as well. So
Correct.
obviously, they're not jumping to the opportunity
No.
to fight it, but they also have their concerns with that situation
Yes.
as well. I mean, and we saw a lot of individuals, women particularly, walking by and saying they didn't feel comfortable. There was already issues going on, and and thank God for what you guys did, because it did. You see the difference that it made. And the one thing that I think we've both seen is that once we start making noise, once we start bringing the topic out front, all of a sudden little changes happen. Now,
That's exactly right.
we may not get credit for it, but we know, and the people know too. So,
Yes.
Besides that, what is another recent event that you guys done that you would like to share?
So I'll admit that after the Fox News coverage, it kind of threw me for a loop because I had no experience in politics prior to that. And then we do this one protest, which at the time seemed like some little protest, and then suddenly Fox News is calling. So it did kind of throw me personally for a loop, because I was like, all right, I wanted to go down this track, but now I have to do this because of that. And our most recent event was an ICE welcome party in Pelham Bay Park. We, again, had about 50 people in attendance. We made very good profit with that, thankfully. And for some reason, it seemed like a lot of people, like, Bronx organizations, had this idea that it was going to be this wild protest and people were going to be fighting, and that's not what it was at all. It was just a bunch of young people who want to put America first and have a couple of beers in the process. That's all it was.
And barbecue.
And a barbecue, which I manned myself for the first time. I never used a barbecue, I'll admit, but the experience was a necessary character development for me, I think.
All right, so now those are two things that you have done. What are some future plans that you have for the club?
Well, right now we're working on a anti-socialism protest with yourself and the Bronx Conservative Party. Zoran Mandami is taking this city by storm, it seems, and there needs to be more events and individuals and candidates and people who sort of ground this out, because it's not just all one thing. There are New Yorkers who don't agree with this overtly socialist, super progressive sort of plan that he has for the city. So we do plan on having a Bronx versus socialism press conference. It is going to be, as you know, the first united effort of all Bronx leaders to sort of combat this neo-super progressive agenda that's pretty much taking our city by storm, as I mentioned earlier.
Now, before the primaries, I don't think anybody thought that socialism would be a hot topic. We all, I think we've all seen it progressive. I mean, we had, AOC is one of the prominent individuals for that. Jamani Williams,
Yes.
the public advocate, has been known. And, we all knew Zohan was a socialist, or a democratic socialist, but his prominence wasn't there. He still doesn't have any bills passed. He's relatively young, with I think only 2 years in his tenureship at the moment.
Yes.
In the assembly. He doesn't really have a background in politics.
No.
So now coming into this, to be competing with individuals and beating in the primary, people like the current mayor, Adams, and Cuomo, former Governor Cuomo, with a $24 million bank account at the time, and then also, let's not forget Curtis Silva, the Republican,
No.
mayoral candidate. And at the time that we're filming this, the polls have shifted. Although it's controlled polls, the numbers have shifted, and the narrative for media and conversation is in more appeals towards Curtis at the moment. Not by a lot, but a lot more than it was
Enough to pay attention to.
enough to pay attention.
Yeah.
And the way I see it, and we're both conservatives here, and in our perspective,
Yeah.
Where do you see this election going, or do you have a layout that you want to see?
Well, I hope Curtis wins.
Yeah, I think that's obvious.
I've met Curtis. I've had a few conversations with him. I think he's a stand-up, solid guy, and I think that anyone else winning this mayoral election will mean doomsday for this city. Now, that's not to say that Curtis is the Messiah. He's not going to save us all from everything that's bad about this city, but certainly more so than Zoran, who I believe is going to add more to the things that are making the city what it is right now. And that's this super progressive. And you mentioned before, he has very little political experience. And I believe that the fact that he is so up there, in fact, I was just having a drink with a friend, and we were discussing politics, obviously. He's a former DSA member. And there were two girls sitting in front of us, and we were talking, just, having a normal conversation about politics. And one of the girls who had bleached eyebrows decided to turn around and tell us how horrible we are, how vile we are. And my response to her was, I love getting yelled at by white people, because she's telling me that we're against the marginalized, and it's like, hello, I'm literally a multiracial high school dropout from the Bronx, raised by a single mother, while this person with dyed eyebrows decides to tell me that I'm fighting against the marginalized. It's little things like that that make you say there is definitely a need to combat this. And I think Curtis is the only hope we have right now to do so.
Well, with that being said, I know there's a bunch of different analysts saying different things. But for me right now, I see as Mondani's or Mr. Zohan has already won, and now our job is to try to take away those numbers so that we have a better chance of winning.
Yeah.
Because I'm talking about statistics in the back end. Normally, the Democrats always have maybe a 60, 70, 80% margin above other candidates. And, right now with individuals like Cuomo, who's going to face more legal battles, and not only with the nursing home situations, probably sexual harassment.
What does Curtis say? Grabbing fannies and killing grannies?
That's his moniker for him.
That's the best.
And then now we have Adams, who's facing multiple lawsuits from his former staff members from his administration. I don't know what Curtis says about him. I can't remember the party guy or something like that.
Swagger man with no plan.
Swagger man with no plan. And Curtis, if he continues the track that he's going in, getting now I think he should be having matching funds shortly, or by the time this airs, he should have matching funds.
Yes.
Then it's increased numbers, more visibility with the communities. And if those two get dropped out, then he has, a head-on-head match. If he doesn't, then the next thing would be to hope that Cuomo and Adams take away more of a chunk, maybe high teens, maybe close to 20s, and then it'll give, the Republicans, conservatives normally have a steady number pace. So then that'll give Curtis a guaranteed percentage in the, let's say, 30s, 35s, or even more if he's lucky.
Yes.
And they'll put him in a higher position.
Yeah, I agree with that. I'm not really so much the logistics guy and the numbers guy, but based on what I'm seeing, everything you just said adds up. And again, I will say that Curtis Sliwa is the best chance that this city has against these far left radicals and this uber, super progressive sort of ideologies that have flooded this city, unfortunately.
Now, you may not be an analytical person, but you're
Yeah.
a boots on the ground type of person.
Yes.
And one of the things that I've seen that not only you, but the club do is your deployments. Would you talk to the audience about that?
Yeah, sure. I think the first bus deployment we had, where we filled up an entire coach bus, you were there. It was the Bucks County deployment for President Trump. Also, after that, it was the first time that county in Pennsylvania has gone Republican since like 1985 or 1986. So that just shows the impact that these deployments have. We have also done deployments for Ina Vertikov and Frank Morano, and I think we'll just continue to do that because it seems like the bus is a brand, and the more we show up for these people, the more we incentivize, regular voters to come out and show support, the better it is.
Well, on top of that, your deployments, I think, has a perfect record at the moment.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
you know.
every single person that we endorsed won their primary this year, and that's a first for the club. And I think it's very indicative of the sentiment of the city, whether or not people are saying it out loud or not.
Well, that's a good thing to know. And then, I hope all your endorsed candidates have equally good amount of luck like that.
Yes,
Wink, wink.
like yourself.
Wink, wink. Wink, wink.
I'm sure you will.
Well, with that being said, what are some things that the Bronx Caucus is planning that maybe, give us some little tidbits that you may have not discussed with me or other individuals in the...
Well, there's nothing I don't discuss with you.
There we go.
But I will say, we, as the Bronx Caucus, we have a show on BronxNet, and which is pretty incredible considering the amount of other content that's produced by BronxNet. It's either apolitical or extremely left-wing, and what we try to do is present the alternative side of the political spectrum, especially considering in the Bronx there is a huge base of Republican conservative voters that are not catered or tailored to because of whatever reason, I don't know. But what was your question? I'm sorry.
Well, what are the things that you're doing?
Oh,
Now,
yes.
Band of the Bronx is the
Yes,
show.
we have Band of the Bronx, and our next upcoming episode, I plan to have a sort of candidate panel with every Republican conservative candidate that's running in the Bronx to have the opportunity to speak and say their piece and get a little bit of FaceTime, because that's something I noticed that's not happening very much.
Wow, giving the other side an opportunity to speak. Who would have thought of that?
I don't know.
Now, that being said, you know how I feel about independent media. It's
Yes.
needed. This particular show, Vet Talk, and Political Chit Chat, we try to have bipartisan, and we invite everybody that we can to speak and voice their opinion, whether they're elected officials or candidates, etc. For Band in the Bronx, what is the audience that you want and the interviewees that you are looking for?
So in terms of audience, we're looking for anyone who aligns with conservative, right-wing, Republican politically. I think maybe for me, it's more important to try to cater to the youth because I'm only 31. I'm trying to and as a person who's 31 who lived in the Bronx and is a Republican, I could say that there is zero representation for people like me. Maybe if they're 40 or so, then yes. But for the younger demographic of Republican voters or potential Republican voters, there's nothing, absolutely nothing. There's barely anything for the regular, the normal age people, I guess, the 35 to 60-year-olds. But yeah, that's the purpose of the Bronx Caucus, is just not to compete with whatever the county Republican Party is doing, but to complete what they've already started. Because we're looking out for our end. We're the future, and these guys have done great work, but for themselves. And now it's time to sort of shift that and start thinking about what are the long-term plans for Bronx-based Republicans in this city in 20 to 30 years. And that's the kind of people I'm trying to aim for.
And that's a good idea because, my thought process is always building a foundation
Yes.
from the bottom up and then working your way on top, where a lot of people think about the top. For this current election, everybody's talking about the mayors, but they keep on forgetting there's 51 city council positions open this year. There's 2 other city council races. There's judgeships going on.
Yes.
And these aren't things that are not talked about and get overlooked. And then everybody's like, well, what's going on with our community? Well, guess what? You're missing out on putting people in or having these conversations or talking,
Yeah.
getting it out there. So,
I agree. And the thing is, not to interrupt,
no, go ahead.
but I think that local politics should have just as much attention, just as much appeal, just as much grit and sexiness as national politics. Because national politics, as important as they are, which no one's refuting that, local politics is more important, in my opinion. You know, the president doesn't determine what I see when I open my front door. Is it a crackhead serenading me, or is it a lady walking her dog? That has very little to do with the president. And I think it's an intentional effort to sort of make local politics less appealing because, you know, no one cares, it's boring. But that's, I think, the future of political interest lies in local politics.
I agree with you, and I believe local politics is more important, and that it's harder than general politics.
Yes.
Well, with that being said, look, you're part of the Conservative Party. You're part of the Young Republicans. You have a talk show. If somebody wants to reach you so they can pick your brain or become a part of one of these organizations that you're with, how do they go about reaching you?
Yes, you could find us on Instagram at Bronx Caucus, or you could email us at Gmail. It's Bronx at nyyrc@gmail.com. And yeah, we're very active on Instagram, and you can email us. Obviously, we're only a few months old, so we're still trying to build that infrastructure. We don't have a Facebook, we don't have a Twitter, but so far Instagram has given us enough, eyes on us to sort of maneuver in a way that we're not. It seems like the Bronx Caucus has existed for much longer than it has. And that's because of Instagram, and that's because of social media and all the different sort of outlets that we have. But yeah, Bronx at nyyrc@gmail.com, or just follow us on Instagram. Just put in Bronx Caucus in the search bar.
I just like to throw in something real quick. The history of the New York Young Republicans. I mean, we're talking about a organization that's over 200 and something years old?
It's the largest and oldest Republican organization in the state.
And the membership is over?
I think we're at 2,000 right now, maybe a little over.
And, well, thank you, Chris. For those that are interested in being on the show, feel free to email me at gonzalodurannyc@gmail.com. Until then, and as always, God bless you and God bless America.